Hi, James.
Hi,
So
thanks for
glad
having me.
thank you. It's a pleasure. Um, I'm so glad to meet you almost in person. We've talked a little bit, but I've not met till this moment in person. As I told you earlier, I read your book about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I loved it and wanted to share it with our small group of thought leaders that are here with us this evening. I thought that we'd give them, if you would, a few of your author's insights. And we thank you so much for spending some personal time with us. We really appreciate it, James. Now that I know, especially that you have 10 or 7 or 10 interviews just today. So I have several questions for you, and we have short time together, but I hope we'll get to the part that explains why a lot of your readers worldwide are taping their mouths shut at night. So maybe that will come up in the conversation. So if I may, the first question that I have for you is, what was one of the most shocking or interesting facts that came up in your 10 years of research on 500 years of human breathing, if I understand correctly?
I think the most shocking thing was to learn that we have become the worst breathers in the animal kingdom. Humans have. Our faces have changed so dramatically that our teeth no longer fit. And because our teeth no longer fit, we have smaller airways. And this is one of the main reasons so many of us suffer from sleep apnea and snoring and other respiratory issues.
Exactly. I thought that was just amazing because, well, let me ask or tell a little bit about how you found that out, because you would have had to look back hundreds of years to see that change or discover it.
Yeah, so this is really right at the beginning of my research. I had heard from some biological anthropologists that all of these morphological changes have occurred in the human face. And I had always understood that evolution worked in a straight line, right? Natural selection, survival of the fittest. We're all getting better and stronger and meaner and living longer. Totally not correct. Evolution means change. And humans, in many ways, are changing for the worse right now. And all you need to do is look at the skeletal record. If you look at an ancient skull, anything from about 500 years old to 5,000 years old, 50,000 years old, 500,000 years on back, they all had straight teeth. And they had these very powerful jaws, these forward growing faces. And if you look at a modern skull, 90% of us now have some sort of crookedness in our teeth. So our faces are actually growing backwards. And when your face grows backwards, your airway gets clogged. And this is not something that's really controversial. Anyone can look at skulls and see this. And I was absolutely shocked that no one had told me this before.
It's amazing, really. And I won't go into, were you the first person to discover this? Or it's just
No.
made it public and aware worldwide, so to speak?
As a journalist, my job is to go out in the field and talk to the experts who have been studying these things for hundreds of years, really. We've known about this for at least 120 years. There are scientific papers showing that our face is getting smaller and smaller. Nobody paid attention. So there's a whole new group of people paying attention because it affects how we do orthodontics. It affects how we fix our faces by looking back. It's almost like the Renaissance, where they look back at ancient Greek and Roman architecture to figure out how to build churches. Now we're looking at ancient skulls to figure out how to fix ourselves. So it's bizarre.
Fantastic. I loved reading that part. Well, then tell us about the, as I call it, quote, crazy, unquote, Stanford University experiment that you and another gentleman participated in, and you had some fascinating results. So could you give us a glimpse of that for our audience?
Sure. So I'm in San Francisco. I'm lucky enough to be very close to Stanford. So I spent a lot of time in their medical library talking to several experts there. I got to be friends with the chief of rhinology research, a man by the name of Dr. Jayak or Nyack. And he was telling me all of the problems associated with mouth breathing and all of the benefits associated with nasal breathing. So when we breathe through our mouths, we're exposing ourselves to everything in the environment. We're taking an air that is untreated, unheated, unmoistened, unpressurized. And this is, again, a known thing. Mouth breathing is very injurious, but we didn't know how quickly that damage came on. So we developed a very small informal study. NIAC had no money allocated for this, so I had to pay for it, which at Stanford was not very cheap. And a breathing therapist from Sweden, I said, it would be really great if we had one other person in here, because it's N1 is, you know, you can find some interesting information data on that, but having two people would really be so much more powerful. So he flew out from Sweden on his own dime for a month to be a part of this study. And the study specifically was 10 days of silicone up our noses, so we're just breathing through our mouths, then 10 days of obligate nasal breathing. And I know this seems crazy, it seems like some stunt, but 25 to 50% of the modern population breathes through its mouth. So we were just lulling ourselves into a position that so many of us already know. The difference is we were measuring it.
Fantastic. And I mean, that alone is worth reading the book for. It's beyond fascinating. Is there any special breathing prescription for us Aspenites living at high altitude, and especially for athletes at high altitude? Does the breathing prescription, so to speak, change?
So I am a journalist. I'm a science journalist. I am not a doctor. I'm not a breathing therapist. Luckily, I spent years and years with these people and picked up a few of their tricks. So I feel uncomfortable giving anyone a prescription because, but I will say I've read a lot of research on this. And one thing that is very, very clear is by breathing slower and deeper and through the nose, you get much better gas exchange, much better oxygenation. There's a study released a couple of years ago where they brought people up to about 17,000 feet, and they had half of the control group was, or the control group, half of the subjects were breathing at a regular rate that they thought were normal. The other were breathing at a rate of about 6 breaths per minute. And the difference of SpO2 between those two populations was about 80%, which is very low for the control group, and about 88 to 89% for the group that was breathing at 6 breaths a minute. Their blood pressure was lower. They were suffering from significantly fewer problems associated with altitude. So it just shows you, a lot of people think, well, I need more breath. I'm at altitude. I'm not getting enough oxygen. You get more oxygen breathing more slowly, deeper into your lungs by breathing fewer breaths. It's so counterintuitive, but the science is very clear on that.
It is, and I really want to know more about that, more detail. Let's see. With all of us wearing masks at the time of COVID, it's just really hard to breathe for me and all of us, in any kind of a mask. Do you have any suggestion for how we can breathe nasally or mouth breathing in masks? Is one better than the other?
I would say use the mask as an opportunity to become conscious of your breath and use it to slow down your breathing. Always breathe through your nose when you have a mask on. I've seen several studies where a lot of people have been saying, I'm not getting enough oxygen. There's no way I'm getting through this mask. There are different masks. There's a bandana, there's cotton masks, there's other surgical masks. So they have different density. But the studies that I've seen is oxygen is not a problem. And if you don't believe this, you can take one of these things, which a lot of people have nowadays, a pulse oximeter, and you can put, this is about 15, 20 bucks on Amazon. You can put a mask on and look at what happens to your oxygen. So what people are reacting to is an increase of carbon dioxide. So many of us have a very low threshold for CO2. That is what triggers the need to breathe. It's not a lack of oxygen, it's an increase of carbon dioxide. And many of us are deficient in CO2, so increasing that a little can actually have many benefits.
Okay. James, I represent the Aspen Brain Institute, and our mission is to create a brain healthy planet. And that's why we're so interested in your work, because I think more and more people are going to need to understand what apparently the Asian people have understood before we have, but understood the benefits of of nasal breathing. So what I want to ask you in that regard is, how does nasal breathing impact mental sharpness or cognitive performance, especially as we age?
So how you breathe is going to affect your anxiety, and your anxiety is going to affect how you breathe. This is really a circle. But the wonderful thing about breathing, we can't consciously go in and change our brains or change our heart rate or change our function of our liver or our stomachs. But when we focus on our breath, we can influence all of these functions. And again, this is very easy to measure. You can see what happens to your heart rate, your blood pressure, your heart rate variability, your SpO2 by just breathing in a certain way. So there's a lot of research right now happening in anxiety and breathing. And what they're finding is people who have anxiety, who suffer from panic, and even asthmatics breathe way more than they need to. And what happens when you're constantly breathing too much, you are sending a signal back to your brain that there is danger. So you are stressing yourself out. So 80% of the messages that come from between the brain and the body are coming from the body up to the brain. So these are afferent messages. So by just changing your breathing, you will be sending different signals to your brain to relax. And this has been studied in innumerable studies and experiments. One interesting one that was just in the Journal of Neuroscience showed that nasal breathing at a slow pace can actually affect the rhythms of the brain waves. So in the amygdala, in the hypothalamus, in the piriform cortex. So all of these things are associated with memory, with stress, with anxiety, that you can see a marked change in your brain waves by slowing your breath. So this is one of the easiest things to do. It's free for everyone. And it's fascinating to me to find so much research happening in this field right now.
Could you actually see a change or a flip from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system?
Absolutely. And you can see this.
Anybody with anxiety attack wants to flip from the proper flip to the proper nervous system.
Yeah, what you can do is there's a lot of, I think even Apple Watch has an HRV measurement on it. So there's a bunch of gizmos out, and a lot of them are pretty cheap right now. So you can take your measurements, focusing on something, talking to a friend. You can see your heart rate variability. It's all over the place. Then you can focus on breathing about 6 breaths per minute, and you just watch these beautiful sine waves occur. So this can't be a placebo effect because you can see it, you can measure it. And again, people have been measuring this for 20, 30 years through biofeedback, showing that by slowing your respiratory rate, by focusing on your breath, you can affect so many systems in your body. You can affect how your heart beats. You can affect your circulation. You can affect oxygenation to the brain. You can affect how the brain functions. So on and on and on.
It's brilliant. Thank you. And then if many of us, like you, I know from your book, have been mouth breathers for decades, and now we know the value, or we will learn the value of nasal breathing. Can we change? Can we change from a mouth breather to a nose breather?
And this was the big result that we learned in Stanford, even though the science had been very well established, was that mouth breathing is so much more damaging than even we thought it was going to be. And we thought it was going to be pretty bad news. I mean, immediately when I switched to become an obligate mouth breather, I started snoring. I started getting sleep apnea. I started getting anxiety. Cortisol went through the roof. Heart rate variability went to the gutter. So on and on and on. Again, this wasn't too much of a surprise to the people who study this. So, mouth breathing when you're a kid can actually affect how your face grows. It's so common. It's called adenoid face. Your face starts growing long and you look like this. So as an adult, I thought, well, what could I do? It turns out we can do a whole bunch. And I spent a year, I took a CAT scan a year before and a year after, and looked to see how much I could affect my airway, how much I could tone my airway, increase my ability to breathe more freely. And I had a dramatic effect just by breathing through my nose. Because when you breathe through your nose, you can try it right now. there's a vacuum coming in and there's positive pressure coming out that can tone those soft tissues at the back of the mouth. So this stuff, sleep taping here, and I have a little roll here. This is just tape you can buy at Walgreens or wherever, Amazon, whatever. This sounded pretty sketchy to me until I heard about it from the doctor of speech language pathology at Stanford, and she said she prescribes it to all of her patients. And what this is at night, it's hard to control what pathway we're breathing air. So
Right.
in the daytime, we can, hey, I'm breathing through my mouth, I better shut my mouth. But at night, a lot of us just do this. I've been doing this for decades. So she taught me that you can just take a teeny piece of tape here and you can put this on your lips. So I can still talk to you. I can cough. I'm just putting it at the center of my lips. I have a beard. I take it off with my tongue. So this is not a hostage situation. This isn't duct tape.
Up and down, not up and down. Just one mouth, one lip.
Different one on both lips.
Okay. Okay.
So different methods work for different people, and there's a bunch of different specific sleep tape products on Amazon. Whatever works for people is cool. I use this. I mean, this roll is going to last me 3 months. It cost me about $3. So, and this had a tremendous impact on my sleep because I was measuring it with a pulse oximeter. I was measuring my snoring. I was measuring everything with the Stanford study. And I've heard from dozens and dozens of people who have had mild to moderate snoring and even sleep apnea for decades. They started putting a teeny piece of tape on their mouth. They no longer suffer from these problems. And they've been recording what's happened. They keep sending me these notes every week. So the best thing is, what do you have to lose? It's free.
Exactly. And as we told you, our producer who's putting on this Zoom call has been doing it every night since he read your book and having terrific results. So I think it's something we all might want to do. I think we're running out of time. James, we thank you so much for taking the time. This has been brilliant. And we've given everybody tonight a copy of your book. And so we're getting more and more nasal breathers. But thank you so much for putting together the scientific research supporting your consequential book. And this will truly change your worldwide audience's lives, or at least their breathing. So thanks again, James, and good luck on the rest of the day.
Thank you very much for having me, and especially at altitude, breathe through the nose, breathe slowly, many benefits to that.
We are. Thank you so much. Ciao. Take care.